Well, good afternoon. We're actually going to pause for a few minutes. We've got a couple of meetings that are taking place across the street that are finishing up. So I think we'll see some people file in here in a few minutes. But I think we have a couple caucus meetings going on that I stepped out of to get here and greet you at least. So we'll get going here in a minute. All right, good afternoon. We're still having some stragglers come in, but we're going to go ahead and get going. I'm meeting general government meeting, first meeting of the year. So appreciate y'all being here. Representative Prince, Chairman Prince. If you'll open us in a word.
Sure. Thank you for another opportunity to come together and do the business of this great state we call Georgia. Father, we ask that you be with us, guide us, strengthen us, give us your wisdom, your understanding, but most of all, your son, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
All right, we're going to jump right into it. First, we've got Department of Natural Resources. Commissioner, come on up. For everybody else here, on the committee, we're going to be starting in section 34, page 14, if you want to follow along. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and there is a 0% chance that I don't alter this PowerPoint for the next presenter before he gets up here. I apologize ahead of time. Good afternoon. It's great to be with you this afternoon, and I am joined today with the main team, the leadership team of the Department of Natural Resources. I have Deputy Commissioner Thomas Bernard with me, Deputy Commissioner Trevor Santos with me, Director Artisha Gaston, and then our Grants Unit Supervisor Taylor Brown Fisher is with us today. And I point these individuals out because we do have a relatively new team in our Commissioner's office. Would love to talk to you today about amended FY24. We have several line items in the 24 budget that we will be talking about, and it can be found on pages 14 and 15 of your tracking sheets. Let me begin by saying how appreciative we are for the governor and this body in providing the $1,000 supplement to all of our employees. It came at a very timely part of the year during Christmas time and the holiday season. And it meant a lot to all of the DNR employees. The first item that you'll see on page 14 under 34.6.2 under our law enforcement division is the addition of $517,000 to our law enforcement division. These funds are to cover equipment and vehicle costs for 6 additional game warden positions. And then when we get to come back and talk to you about fiscal year 25, I'll be looking for some drivers for these 6 vehicles, but trying to get ahead of the curve and get some equipment for them. Our second item is under the State Parks and Recreation Historic Site section, and it is a reduction of $55,000 that can be found on page 15 on line 34.7.2. The third item takes us to our Wildlife Resources Division. On line 34.9.2, you'll see the addition of about $46,000 that will cover the equipment and vehicle costs for a training coordinator position, and that is in an effort to standardize training in that division. A figure that I used the other day in presenting to you was 42% of that division has 0 to 5 years of experience. So getting those people the institutional knowledge that they need to be able to operate equipment in a safe fashion, stuff like critical incident management, the response that we use when we roll out to tornadoes or storms or any other natural disasters. This position would coordinate all of that training. On line 34.9.3, you'll see the increase of funds for flood and fire hazard mitigation on Sapelo Island. The amount is $528,000. Sapelo Island Heritage Authority in the community of Hog Hammock has several properties, or a little over 100 acres of properties there, and we need to go in and do some mulching just to protect the community. On line 34.9.4, you'll see the request for $590,000 for environmental hazard mitigation on Ossabaw Island. You know, the state purchased that island in 1978. However, we didn't take full responsibility for the island until January of 2021, where Miss West passed away at the age of 108. And that's when, of course, we started having hurricanes that hit our coast. But anyway, just over the many, many decades on Ossabaw Island, a number of junk vehicles have accumulated, scrap metals, tires, that kind of thing, old boats. So we're looking at, like I said, over 100 vehicles to be removed from that island and 60 to 80 dumpster boxes to remove all of the trash. Items 34.9.5 and 34.9.6 are yes items for DNR to utilize funds from the Wildlife Endowment Fund for some of our fish hatchery renovations and for equipment purchases for our deer management assistance program that we have within WRD. Let's see. And then the last item under the governor's budget highlights on page 7, you'll see about a little over $14 million for renovations at Lake Blackshear. A little over a year ago, we had some reports of the integrity of our lodge down there was very compromised to the point where we were forced to close that lodge. The General Assembly was good enough to support us in our bond request last year to help the demolition of that building, and then this money would reflect a build back on that property. And that, Mr. Chairman, is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions for amended 24.
Well, it looks like you piqued some interest over here, so that's good. Maybe not. Right. We'll go with. Oh. Chairman Smith.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation. I'm glad to see increase in personnel for the division. We've been cutting it back for several years now, and I'm glad it's finally being restored. There's probably not a lot of understanding as to why you need to increase your deer management assistant program. If you could go into what we thought was a rural problem, but is now also an urban problem with deer management.
So this is a relatively new program within the Wildlife Resources Division, and it's, we do a really good job of providing services on our public lands. This program engages the landowners, private landowners across the state. We have within this program, there's deer management coalitions where you can go in there and cull bucks or cull the number of does that one would need if it's outside of like the state allowed bag limits. They also do disease control and management and try to do detection with CWD on the horizon, chronic wasting disease on the horizon. This is a way for us to test deer off of private lands, not just the public lands or at deer coolers that we see. They also assist with feral hog control and the technical advice that private landowners sometimes need to help mitigate that. And then, of course, if you look at the number of crop depredation permits that have gone up across the state, again, we would like to manage those deer numbers across our state with hunting versus crop depredation. And this is just a way of encouraging landowners to bring hunters in and to give them some idea about how many deer they need to take on their private lands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I just may add to that, when you talked about crop depredation, that is a source of income for several of our Georgia citizens around the state. It also includes our timber, our new timber sprigs. I mean, it is hurting our economy very much so. So I'm glad that we're funding it and you're taking the initiative. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've got two. For the vehicle costs, appreciate you getting ahead of that. With some of the assistance we've gotten over the last couple of years, how has the recruitment been for game warden positions? I know you're going to be looking for drivers. How do you foresee that?
So we're at probably 228 game wardens statewide right now, and that includes the administrative staff, the ranks, in order to adequately supervise that. We're probably at like 188 in the field. Recruiting is tough in any law enforcement division, so or any law enforcement agency. It's equally as tough in DNR. Even though we try to say, come drive a ATV, we'll give you a boat and all the boat gas that you need to go out and patrol our state. We've started, I would like to highlight a new program that we just started January 1st in an effort to recruit, and I'm not saying that we've changed our standards, but now we're accepting applications for anyone that's got a high school diploma. For the last couple of decades, you've had to have at least a 2-year degree or an associate's degree in order to apply with the law enforcement division. Now we've opened that up. Now the caveat to that is we'll hire you with a high school diploma. Before you promote within the agency, we will require them to have that 2-year degree or an associate's degree going toward their bachelor's. But to get back to your question, it is certainly a challenge. These 6 positions will go a long way to help fill some gaps, but there's always room for more.
But do you feel like it has increased, has gotten better, turnover rate?
I would say our turnover rate has probably remained steady. We're losing those 3 to 8 year employees. That's where most of our turnover's going.
Okay. I've got one more, but we'll get a couple other questions. We'll go with Representative Stoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that question you were talking about, just clarification. So we're hiring someone with a high school diploma, but of course we're going to require them to get basically an associate degree. Are we helping them pay for that?
Currently, we do not have a plan for that. We would like to move into that.
Yeah.
Of course, they would qualify depending on their status. The Hope Scholarship, we've got a program in place where we hire people that have been discharged from the military. So the GI Bill certainly applies to that. And then we're working with a number of the technical schools in Georgia that will give them college credits for their post hours and the training that they receive in basic mandate.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gamble.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, good to see you today. Appreciate your leadership at the department. And I know a lot of us have been down to the lodge there at Lackshire, and I think maybe as recently as 2 years ago for me, I stayed there. It was a great experience, and I understand there was some mold issues in some of the lodging part. I guess as we're planning for reconstruction there, is there anything that we need to be thinking about appropriations-wise to help aid in construction methods that might prevent a situation like that from happening again? Or I guess I'm curious, maybe did we fail to support what needed to be done and not give you enough money to build the type of facility that would resist that, or if it just was purely simply a failed construction process somehow?
Without throwing too many rocks from 20 years ago, and that's how long that building was there. That
Yeah.
lodge is only 20 years old, and I say only 20 years old. The processes that are in place now
Is better.
in our construction engineering, absolutely,
Okay,
100%
that's
better.
good to know. Thank you.
Representative Chairman, you're
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much. Appreciate the job you're doing. And my question was similar to Floor Leader Gamble's the question about the Veterans Park in Lake Blackshear. And of course, there was money in the budget to do the demo last year. And can you expand on the project just a little bit about what you're planning to do down there?
So bulldozers may be operating as we speak on the demolition side of it. If not, it's within a couple of weeks of beginning that. So we'll do the demolition on the current lodge. We're going to leave that conference center and leave that restaurant is it Delia's, or I can't remember the name of the restaurant. Cornelius, that's it.
Cornelius.
We're going to leave that building there, make it where it will blend in with the new facade, so to speak, once it's there. The current plan right now is 5 two-bedroom cabins along the beginning, or the edge of the lake, and then 5 4-bedroom cabins that could be rented out as one big unit or rented out as individual units. And, you know, we've had a lot of talk with the community. Everyone seems to be in favor of moving forward with that. And I can tell you, looking at our numbers, that's something that's very sustainable for the state of Georgia. Instead of losing money there each year, which has been a challenge for some time, I feel confident that we should at least break even, but perhaps even in the black.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Step back to employment for a second. When we've seen some of the losses, do we track, or have you had an opportunity to track where any of them go, or do we know who we're losing them to?
We do, particularly if you're speaking on the law enforcement side. Probably half go to other law enforcement agencies, and right now a lot of the local agencies are paying more money than the state. We probably lose another quarter to the federal law enforcement agencies, and then probably 25% of them just decided they wanted to get out of law enforcement altogether. Many of them go back to teaching school or that kind of endeavor.
All right. Osabal, the money we have in there for that, how confident are we does that get everything cleaned up? Does that get how far does that take us?
I'm pretty confident that gets everything cleaned up. Like I said, we did a really detailed kind of audit of how much junk do we have out there.
Yeah.
And, 60 to 80 is, that's a pretty big gap, but hopefully no more than 80 of those 40-yard containers would do it, and then 100 vehicles. So that's a pretty hard number.
You can come do an audit in my basement and see what we can get. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, so I appreciate you very much. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Jeez. Thank you, David. That's why we have good analysts like David Hartman here next to me to remind me. The committee, everybody has a list in front of them of the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund projects that were awarded. Commissioner, if you can go into that for us, that'd be
Certainly
great.
would be glad to talk to you about the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program. You'll remember that the program went before the voters in 2018 and started in 2019 after y'all passed the bill for us. It is a grant and loan program that's the state's first dedicated funding mechanism to support local parks and trails for nature-based recreation, such as camping, fishing, hunting, biking, and other outdoor pursuits. It provides funding for stewardship of conservation land. It supports acquisition and protection of lands critical to wildlife, clean water, and military installation buffering around our state. This fund is funded by the state portion of money received by the state from the sales and use tax collected on outdoor sporting goods equipment. So 40% of that sales tax goes to the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. Eligible applicants include qualified local governments, constituted recreation authorities, state agencies, and non-governmental entities with a primary concern on the protection and conservation of natural resources. In the past 4 years, and these numbers are pretty astounding to me, in the past 4 successful funding cycles, more than $97 million of funding has been allocated to 50 conservation and outdoor recreation projects. Grantees have committed $175 million in match for a grand total of about $272 million that's gone to conservation in the state of Georgia. These funds positively impacted 54 counties, and this is our 5th cycle. The pre-application period opened on August 1st and closed October the 13th of this past year. Projects were reviewed, scored, and ranked by a review team in November and December in accordance with the approved evaluation criteria that is set by the Board of Trustees. On January 16th, the Board of Trustees of the Outdoor Stewardship Fund met and approved a slate of projects. And then I'm happy to report that just a couple of hours ago, the Board of Natural Resources met and also approved for us to transmit this to you today. A list of the slate of projects and project distribution map is made available to you. We would respectfully request approval for this slate of projects.
Anyone on the committee have a question for Commissioner regarding these projects? Chairman Smith.
Again, thank you for this and for the effort y'all put into doing this. I know it's a very concentrated effort throughout the year. And I just want to say this is not elite, that any county, city, any group that wishes to participate in this, you have resources in which to help them, and the goal is to get to the state as a whole. It's been very beneficial to my part of the state, and it has definitely helped several other regions of our state. So thank you for your help and stewardship.
Thank you. And it is a very efficiently run program. I will say that we have the grants unit supervisor, Taylor Brown Fisher, here with us today. But I will say that the team that has come up with this outside of the scores for this is a whole team of 2. So a lot of work is done throughout the year. And as the chair lady said, we take many phone calls from cities and counties and NGOs.
Well, I'll just echo what Chairman Smith said. I know you guys put a lot of work into it. It's obviously been a great program. And we're in a current posture. I'm going to call on Chairman Prince.
Mr. Chairman, it's proper time. I'd like to make a motion that we approve this list.
This would be that time.
So move.
Second.
I hear a motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate what you're doing for us.
Thank y'all.
Okay. Commissioner King, come on down.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman
Good morning.
and members of the
Afternoon.
committee. Thank you so much for the ability for us to come in and pitch not only the successes that you all have helped us achieve at the Office of Insurance Commissioner, but also our respectful request to be able to do some adjustments to our agency as we continue to make progress on the important task of being able to repair our agency now to be one of the best agencies. And it's thanks to the team. I'm the designated cheerleader, and I'm very glad to be that. But we have an incredible team that helps us every day look after Georgia consumers. All right, let's see if I don't, it's been a while since I've driven one of these. Okay, there you go. I won't read the slide to you, but sir, it's just clearly, you know, every organization has a clear mission statement, and it drives the efforts. And when there's lack of detailed guidance, we always go back to our mission statement. And ours is straightforward, is we're looking after Georgia consumers and giving them the best products available at the fairest, and also dealing with complaints and holding insurance companies accountable. Sir, our members of the committee, our agency is divided in 3 units. Insurance, regulation, safety, fire, and our newest division is Georgia Access. And I'll go into detail into each one of these and then open it up, obviously, at the end of my presentation for any questions you all may have. All right, I won't, most of my remarks on each one of the divisions are going to be similar, so I won't waste a lot of y'all's time by repeating the same blurb. But I want to start on page 11 of your tracking sheets. The entirety of section 29 covers the Office of Insurance Commissioner. And subsection 29.2, this covers our enforcement division. And basically, it provides the legal services, analysis, representation, coordination of litigation department, primarily focusing on enforcement state laws related to insurance, fire safety, and fraud, and defending the department's decisions on rate filings and other administrative matters. We really appreciate the governor's budget and y'all's support on being able to give us, our employees, the one-time supplemental, which is incredibly valuable. As you will see, you consistently, you're going to get probably every department come to you and appreciate it, because we're in competition for talent. You saw the DNR director. He has a challenge like probably no other, because he specializes so much, but we have an equally challenging environment because private enterprise is attracting and hiring our folks. In the days of having somebody come and work for our agency for 30 plus years, those days have gone out the door. We can't sustain that. And so we've shifted our priorities in our approach to attracting employees, training them, and then working a cycle in and out of our agency. Subsection 29.3 deals with our safety fire department. We promote fire safety by educating, training, and enforcing safety standards, inspecting various facilities and equipment, regulating public building, fire safety, managing hazardous materials, and ensuring compliance with safety regulations on all types of structures. Of course, again, we appreciate the governor and the legislature's support of our one-time adjustment to the salary so we can retain and attract new employees. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I guess I'll go into the real meat of my presentation, is the reinsurance. In subsection 29.5. Reinsurance is a product of the Patients First Act that was passed by the legislature, which has stabilized the insurance market through increased private health competition in addition to our standard appropriation. The governor and the General Assembly have graciously allocated a one-time supplement and to these staff, and has added $134 million to fund the reinsurance program, and has added roughly $16.4 million to finalize the public awareness campaign for Georgia Access. Again, I will go into a little bit more details on why, how we've determined this. And I think, Mr. Chairman, we spoke last year about why the budget year is different than the plan year, and so they don't coincide. And so a lot of times there's some overlap between budget cycles. The plan year for insurance carriers is different than obviously the fiscal year that the state of Georgia. And so that requires us to have some flexibility, and that's what we're asking for consideration on this budget request. Subsection 29.6, special fraud. It combats insurance fraud through detection, investigation, collaboration of various agencies, enforcing measures to protect consumers and related financial losses. Georgia's still number 2 in the nation on insurance fraud. Our agents consistently. We are not trying to replicate what other state law enforcement agencies are doing. We want to be the partner of choice for a very complicated, very tough types of cases, very complex of insurance fraud investigations. And we've been working very successfully with not only GBI, but local and other state agencies and our federal partners to cut down on the amount of fraud going on all lines of insurance. And so I appreciate the past support that this committee has had in making sure that Georgia at least gets out of the top 10. That's my goal, because that's hurting every family in Georgia. The additional costs associated with fraud is between $400 and $700 per family in Georgia as a result of the costs associated with fraud. And so I ask for you continue consideration in supporting our efforts to combat this big problem that we have.
I appreciate that. You touched on we did.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm
getting ahead of myself.
I'll go
ready to
into
go.
some more details, sir. Hopefully, I'll answer some of your questions, but obviously, I'll leave plenty of time in the answer.
Chomping at the bit.
No, I understand, sir. That's how you are. I don't blame you. Sir, in the amended fiscal year 24, we're asking for the following, sir. We're roughly $1 million in reallocation, being able to shift fund money that we already have allocated in our agency into the safety fire division. As I told you all in past years, we took risk in our agency, focusing on new construction because we did not want to slow down the amount of growth that Georgia was undergoing. But the risk we took was in moving that staff to new construction. Now is the time to come. I'm asking for the permission to reallocate those funds so now I can go and hire and retain existing construction. to stabilize now the priorities, not only for new construction, but also where we took risk in the existing construction across the state. And this is to hire inspectors and provide them with the necessary equipment so they can go continue doing inspections of buildings across the state of Georgia. The $134 million, and I'm for your reference, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm looking at section 29, beginning on page 11 of your tracking sheet. $134 million investment into the reinsurance fund, and to fulfill the mission of the Patients First Act by maintaining Georgia's thriving health insurance market and keep health insurance premiums low for all consumers. The creation of this reinsurance program allowed Georgia counties to have 2 or more health insurance carriers, along with a record number of Georgians enrolled in health insurance. And so this reinsurance program has achieved the intended goals of stabilizing and bringing more carriers to all parts of Georgia. No county has less than 2. Most of the other counties have more than 2 carriers operating in those counties. And lastly, a one-time investment of roughly $16.4 million into Georgia Access to drive consumers to our platform and reduce the number of uninsured Georgians. Georgia has over 1.3 million plans selected for plan year 2024. This is a monumental growth and is the largest plan selection in Georgia's history. So we are achieving, with the Patients First Act, what you all try to achieve, it is showing true progress. We are outperforming the federal government's 2-to-1, and that is a conservative look at the performance of Georgia Access. This effort will be used to further develop Georgia Access brand and awareness and continue to drive our number of enrolled numbers for this year. After this year, that program should be able to run on its own, using the fees generated from that agency, from that division to fund that. So this will be, I hate to make promises, but I don't see it very likely that I will come and ask you for any additional monies in the future, because this program will be able to run. And that was the intended plan on our strategy on starting Georgia Access. As Georgia continues to flourish, being named the #1 state for business for a decade, our role in the Insurance Commissioner's Office has never been more vital. With over 1 million new residents and a surge of infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, and businesses, our commitment to ensuring our safety and well-being of every Georgian is unwavering. I really appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the support that this committee has given us in repairing our agencies, getting us back on our feet. You'll be able to show, and I think you continue the comments that you're getting from the communities, the folks that you send us to help is showing. By far, we've been able to recover $97 million back to consumers' pockets because you all gave us the tools to really beef up our agency to go in and investigate when insurance companies don't do their job. And so I greatly appreciate it. And with that, sir, I will pause and open it up for your questions, the members of the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner. You mentioned in your earlier remarks, and I've shared some heartburn over the reinsurance program. So for the benefit of the committee and the public at large, can you go over, the challenges again that you have on being able to project the needs?
The reinsurance program is focused on the bills that come in, especially for the high-risk pool of Georgians that don't have sufficient coverage. And so in the marketplace, especially in rural parts, when we only have one company operating, the way to attract more more private health companies to compete in that market, we had to go and subsidize and help cover the high-risk pool that either you pay through reinsurance or you will end up paying with emergency rooms, because that's what happens. When people don't have insurance, they go to our emergency rooms where nobody can be denied of coverage. And so you pay a much higher rate at emergency rooms, and it ties up valuable critical bed space that folks in true emergencies are getting. That's a one over the world. The success of Georgia Access, and by next year will be the completion of our rollout And that's why I'm asking for that money for the engagement. Once the whole program comes under Georgia, right now we're sharing duties and responsibilities with the federal government. Once that, and our plan is, and the federal government has granted us approval to get this completely a Georgia marketplace by next year. All that money generated from those fees will be reinvested into reinsurance, relieving the burden of the budget from the legislature to have to allocate those funds. So I expect a major dent. But the challenge, you asked me rightly so last year, how much is this going to cost? I can't tell you until the bills get turned into people filing claims. And because the budget year is not lined up with the plan year, that's where that disconnect comes. I hope I know this, I got some really sharp folks that probably can do a better job explaining that, but I figure as a good tanker, I could probably, if I'm not allowed to draw drawings on the walls, I figured that'll be the best way to explain it.
Fair enough. Chairman Yurda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. You mentioned that Georgia is the second worst in cases of insurance fraud. How did we get to that point in Georgia, and is there something that we can do? And I know you're working hard to bring that number down in your agency, but are there things that we can do in the legislature to help that?
I think, sir, there's no, I wish I could say if we would have done this 20 years ago, we would have solved all this. The challenges in insurance fraud investigations are hard, they're complicated, and very few agencies, especially over the years, agencies cutting back and focusing on violent crime, communities in Metro Atlanta is focusing on a rash, over the years. Of course, that made a big dent, lately. But agencies are having to basically say, hey, if we can't identify a victim, then we'll just put that in the back door. We're going to deal with the person that's bleeding, the home that got burglarized. And our state agencies, they're focusing on, on officer-involved shootings, GBIs, human trafficking. And rightly so. Their priorities in the right place. So there was no agency. Our agency was broke. I'll be honest. There was no real staff that could go and successfully prosecute cases because they didn't have the training, they didn't have the background, and they just were not the kind of folks that would be allowed into a courtroom to testify. We've taken over this agency. I fired a lot of folks that had no business serving in our state. And I went and hired and trained, and using the support of this committee, invested in their training. Now we are the partner of choice. We're actually going to district attorney's offices and helping their prosecutors present these cases to a grand jury and prosecutor. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of this trouble overnight as well. But we're making a serious dent. And we're making, as you notice, every time we arrest or we bring somebody to trial in your communities, we share that public announcement with y'all. And we're making people think twice before they engage in this activity because there's going to be somebody that's going to hold them accountable. But so these criminals are brilliant. They stay under the limit of district attorneys, and because they're focusing on violent felonies, and they stay right below the federal threshold. And if they can operate in that middle, we're the only agency that's focusing. I'm not trying to build a kingdom by asking you to support hiring a crazy number of officers. We're getting out of Atlanta. I have the folks that we're hiring them, and they live in local communities. My relationship with chiefs of police and sheriffs, they're letting me house our agents in their stations, so you're not paying for rent. Because rent across the street is kind of expensive, if you haven't noticed that. But that is paying dividends. We are there in the community. We're listening to victims. We're talking to sheriffs. We're talking to police chiefs. We're talking to district attorneys, and we're bringing people to justice. We're making a dent on this, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Parson.
Thank you, Chairman. The light on the switch here is not coming on. It probably looked like I was sending Morse code or something.
I wasn't sure. I thought you were in distress.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to ask you, you may have explained this and I just didn't hear it or whatever, but on this, around line 29, 3.2, this $995,231 to safety fire, to reallocate to safety fire
Yes.
from other programs. I'm just wondering what other programs that.
Inside the division, sir, I have an insurance, and then I have the safety fire, and then I have Georgia Access. To be able to move monies from the insurance over to safety fire, I have to come and ask you all for that permission. And what I've done is we've taken risk, and we've gone and focused on new construction because we didn't want to get in the way of economic development projects going across Georgia. As a result of that, I had to pull staff from the existing construction inspection. And what I'm not asking is to rebalance our agency by allowing me to hire folks and to be able to make sure that we don't neglect existing construction safety inspections. So what I'm asking is permission to move money from one division to the other so I can get that agency back, that division back into where we need to be at.
Yeah, and if I may, I think you explained it, but it just seemed like a lot of money to be, I'm just wondering, why is it not needed there? It was needed in the old budget or needed at some point. Where that money or where the staff is coming from, how are they continuing to do their job? I mean, is their mission been accomplished or is it?
No, they're still ongoing, but what I'm doing is increasing the staff in existing construction inspections. I'm not moving the people. I'm asking for money so I can go and hire people so I can rebalance our agency. Because Georgia's growing at such a rate, that has not slowed down. And I don't want to be the agency that gets in the way of a local community not being able to open an economic development project because the inspectors, we were 7 months behind in inspections. We were costing, when it comes to time and materials, we're costing local communities, we're costing the state in the past the opportunity to get a project off the ground. And I don't want to be that agency. This is a team sport, and I don't want to be the agency that causes Georgia to lose out on an important economic project.
Okay, thank you.
Following up on that though, real quick. So, whereas you and I have had multiple conversations about, I love more inspectors. I'm in the industry. I know the backlog, but the funds that are being transferred. How are those funds being generated?
They're generated from insurance, from insurance activity. A number of lines of we get some from insurance funds that we collect. Part of it goes into the premium tax, fines, fees, a number of lines. I don't know I have Shad Devella. He's my
Sure.
my numbers gentleman.
If you don't.
I've gained weight. I can't.
I was gonna say. I was about to say that was gonna be impressive right there.
Yeah. I would have been impressed as well. So I see how he eats. So
If you don't mind introducing yourself too, just for everybody.
My name is Chad DeBella, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer and the Chief Operating Officer for OCI. So the funds that you're referring to coming from the program insurance regulation, and we are generating those by other funds. So there's fees that we charge outside the agency, not to other state agencies, but that we generate and we use those funds internally. Any of those funds that we do not use gets returned to Treasury at the end of the year. But that's that's what is allowing this to occur. So there's no loss of revenue or duties in insurance regulation due to these transfer of funds. Everything is still being performed there as needed.
a good example of some of these fees, for example, when you all call me and say, John, can you get me an inspector out here? This is a high priority. We offer companies an ability to fast track and we contract out some of those inspections to make sure we're not slow in the process. And so a lot of those funds get generated through those fees.
I think we might have one more. Which one? Here's grab one. All right.
We're on the side of the chair we don't generate any fees, so we have to work hard to get our budget recognized, our punching, and no, I'm joking. So I think as a need for reassurance for our Georgia people who are listening to this, first of all, you're being innovative.
Yes, ma'am.
But secondly, is this based on a practice from another state that you're kind of modeling after? I think that might.
It's a
give-
number of states, ma'am. We taken the best practices from many states. When you all authorize us to stand up Georgia Access, I have personal relationships with a number of commissioners, Utah, Arkansas, Massachusetts, New Jersey. We took the best. But what I asked those commissioners is that if you had a chance to redo this, what would you not do? And that has been probably the most valuable, because a lot of states have only government-run type, marketplace. What we did in Georgia is truly innovative. Not only do we have a government, marketplace, but we also bring in private health to compete for those policies, to offer options, especially to the folks that we call the young people who are just starting in life that don't need the Cadillac, but they do just need basic, good insurance for that, hopefully that event that doesn't occur, but then they have a backstop. And so those are the options that we're providing Georgians. What makes Georgia's, plan different is that we're not just coming out with a message from Atlanta, Georgia, saying this is a great you need to sign up. That's kind of like what the federal government approach. We're going to your communities, talking to folks in the places they gather. We're going to Dalton. The message in Dalton is different than Gainesville, different than Vidalia, different than Valdosta, different than Albany. We're going to those communities, talking to local people, local community leaders who have the credibility, and says, how do we address the need in your community? That's what makes Georgia Access truly different. And we have a lot of other states that looking at. They're very impressed the way that Georgia has been able to approach this problem. Said our biggest challenge is just letting the federal government just, they've done a good job. I don't want to blast them, but I think Georgians, we can do better, because you have an elected insurance commissioner who's accountable to the people. I can't tap my way out of this. I can't tap dance my way out of. My job is to get more Georgians to get access to affordable health insurance, and we're going after it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, in essence of time, we're going to let you get off the hook today and move on down the list. But thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you for your
and we'll follow
your
up
grace.
we'll follow up with some other things, especially before you start dancing.
No worries. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move on to Department of Banking and Finance, Section 14, page 6 in your tracking sheets. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak today. Kevin Hagler, Commissioner of the Banking Department. Been with the Banking Department for 27 years. Had the honor of serving as Commissioner the last 10 and a half or so. So thank y'all. I'm not sure that everybody knows about the Banking Department. I know several of you do very well. But we are a regulatory agency. We regulate 117 banks with $134 billion in total assets, and 38 credit unions with $31 billion in total assets. That's on our bank supervision side. On our non-depository side, we regulate 35,000 mortgage loan originators, 2,000 mortgage companies, 274 money service businesses, 165 installment lenders, and 771 check cashers. So I say all that in that we stay very busy. As has been said before, we're greatly appreciative of the governor's $1,000 payment at the end of the year for the staff. It was incredibly well received, and we hope that y'all will fund that since we've already paid it out. So thank y'all very much. My budget presentation today, far simpler than what you've seen so far. We have one unique item other than the payments to staff, and that is Section 14, I think you're page 16, 14.1.2, 60. Oh, sorry. Am I in the wrong book? Sorry.
You're good.
Okay. It's, and you're not missing zeros here, it's $64,000, 536. We play with a little smaller numbers on our department, but The governor's office was very kind to reach out to us last year and say, are there any initiatives that would help with efficiency and return with a proper return on investment? We laid out several, and this is the one that the governor's office liked the best and recommended to be in the budget. Basically, we have two lines of business, if you call them that are coming on board, and these monies would allow us to update our database through our vendor to be able to input those entities into the database, do the billing, do the tracking, and everything that we need to, as opposed to us, if we don't have this, we'll have to scroll it out on a notepad or set it up, and we still have a billing issue. The two programs are, one is, actually it's been around for a while, the Merchant Acquirer Limited Purpose Bank Charter, which really rolls off the tongue. Many of y'all may know that this is considered transaction alley for credit card payments. 70% of all the payment transactions in the U.S. flow through the Atlanta to Alpharetta area. Those entities that are not banks themselves must partner with a bank to gain access to to Visa and MasterCard, for example. This charter was created about 12 years ago by the General Assembly to allow them to gain access directly. Visa and MasterCard were born out of banks, and therefore they require that you have a bank identification number to be a member and get access. This charter would create a specialty bank for those entities to go through. It was not received real warmly by Visa and MasterCard 12 years ago, but a lot has changed in the world since then, and we currently have we've received an application from a very large data processor and vendor for banks. And we have reason to believe that we'll receive another one very soon and probably another one after that. So this would be very timely to get the vendor for our database to start working on that. And the fees alone are $50,000 a piece, so we'll pay for these updates very quickly. The other initiative is one that y'all were gracious enough to pass for us last year in our housekeeping bill, which is to expand our foreign bank branching options here in Georgia to be more competitive with states like Florida and California and New York. With all the foreign investment that we have in Georgia and opening of plants and such, various attorneys and other regulators have mentioned to us that there was probably a demand for foreign banks to open a branch here. Those are typically not FDIC insured. And the main purpose of them is to facilitate international trade. So it's not really a competitor with our local community banking, but we think that there will be some demand for that as well. And so that's why we're also trying to have the database updated so we can enter those new entities in there and track them properly and bill and such. So that is probably more than you wanted to know, but I'm happy to answer any questions for anything related to that or anything else.
Floor Leader Gamble.
Thank you for your presentation. I know you can't probably comment on pending legislation, but if any additional regulation was assigned to your agency, there would obviously be a cost in there. Even if it wasn't a financial cost, it would be more time. But is that something that I guess you would have to account for if it were to happen, and then we would have to budget for in the future? Or how does that work? I guess the most recent example we could use was when the industrial loan people were moved under your purview. Did the funding show up the next year, or did you get any additional funding for that extra work? How does that work?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, and thank you for the concern. It means a lot to us. In the example that you cited, when Industrial Loan Act moved over to Georgia and we renamed it the Installment Lending Act, some of the funding from the Insurance Commissioner's Office, as well as people and a couple of vehicles, came over with it. So we had funding right away when it came with us. You touch on a point that's very near and dear to our heart. We run an incredibly lean and efficient organization. So to take on additional responsibilities, we already struggle incredibly to do the job today, and I'll be making this pitch more next time we get together to talk about the next budget. But yes, anytime that we are brought into the loop when someone is looking at having the department regulate an additional line of business, that we usually have just a couple of asks. They seem major though, but one is to allow us to properly regulate it, to have the ability to promulgate rules and regulations as well as enforcement actions and things of that nature. The other piece that we really hope for is that it not be an unfunded mandate. We work with, I think it's Commissioner Gregg's office, to get the auditing department, or I'm not sure who it is, but to get an estimate as to what it might cost. And oftentimes that's 1 or 2 examiner positions, maybe even a little bit of training travel and such to go with it. But we're usually talking hundreds of thousands, not tens of millions with us. But it is important that when a new program come over, that it come with some funding, because like I say, we're really struggling to meet the mandates. And on our non-depository side, we simply are not meeting those mandates today that we already have.
Well, Commissioner, I appreciate it. I don't see any more questions.
Well, thank you all very much for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Moving on to Department of Audits and Accounts. Mr. Griffin, you want to join us up at the podium? Now you're on page 1, section 4 for the committee.
All set?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wiedauer and members of the committee, and again, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again. As requested, we will focus on the amended 24 budget, and as you just said, our information is in section 4. Just as a quick reminder about our budget, we have 4 programs. 4.1 is captures our audit costs. 4.2 is administration. 4.3 is where we track our legislative costs. And 4.4 is where we accumulate our costs associated with the statewide equalized adjusted property tax digest. So that's a group of real estate appraisers that we have. Our total change for the amended is down at the bottom of the page there. It's $1.35 million. I'll talk about that in a second. Just as a reminder about our budget, about 90% of our budget is made up of personnel costs, and we are funded pretty much entirely with state appropriations. So our amended budget for 24 is twofold. We are requesting about $1 million of non-recurring funding for our data analytics activities, and another $337,000 for funding of merit or performance-based salary adjustments. And what that was we wanted to accelerate the adoption of our FY25 salary increases that we were asking for in the fourth quarter of 24. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And both and all, pretty much all of, or both of those requests are allocated across all the budget programs that you see in section 4 there. So let me first address the data analytics request. Again, this is for one-time funds to improve our analytical tools and capabilities and to implement or execute on several advanced analytical projects. The ability to access and analyze timely, accurate, and meaningful data is imperative to us in meeting our mission of providing independent, unbiased, and impactful information and recommendations to improve government. As one of our strategic initiatives, we have embarked on a multi-year journey to create a culture of innovation, immersing ourselves in data analytics and artificial intelligence capabilities. We are asking you to invest in us as we shape the future of our work, bringing greater transparency and accountability and a commitment to excellence in government auditing. We are confident that this initiative will yield a significant return on investment benefiting our office, but also the constituents that we serve. And I'm going to reiterate a few of the benefits that I discussed last week at the joint hearings. I'll focus on three main areas: risk assessment and management, decision-making, and optimization of resource allocation and efficiency gains. And I'll be brief. So first, data analytics will intensify our risk assessment and management practices. By leveraging large amounts of data and sophisticated analytical techniques, our auditors and analysts can gain deeper insights and make better informed decisions regarding risks. These tools and techniques will provide a greater breadth and depth of useful insights to first uncover hidden patterns and anomalies which could correlate to emerging risks, and two, to develop predictive analytics and forecasting, allowing for an assessment of the likelihood and impact of identified risks. So early detection of anomalies can prevent significant financial losses, leading to overall cost savings in total. With these insights, our teams can better target our testing. Some practical examples would be to focus in on the budgetary compliance that goes on every year. We can focus on agencies that don't manage their budget programs throughout the year, or identifying and reviewing significant transfers and journal entries that are made at the end of the year. These would be indicators of higher risks that we should be concerned about, or possible candidates for process improvement recommendations for better government. Another example we're looking at is something called process mining, and this is where analytics can expose activities that do not follow the expected policies and procedures, where controls are not operating as expected or appear to be poorly designed. Second, data analytics will enhance our decision-making. Data-driven insights can provide a solid foundation for informed decision-making. Some practical examples here include using benchmarking trends and patterns to determine potential audit topics, essentially informing us about our audit program. Visualizing the results of data analytics to make recommendations and findings more understandable will lead to improved conversations back and forth between us and our auditees, and ensuring compliance with regulations by identifying potential areas of noncompliance and suggesting corrective actions. And the last benefit is optimized resource allocation and efficiency gains. Data analytics can be used to streamline our audit processes and to ensure we are allocating resources in the way that ensures the greatest impact. So one example here would be building and applying what I call pre-tuned algorithmic analyzers to large. That was a mouthful. Who put that in here? That's a large mouthful. We would be applying these analyzers to large data sets and or complete populations. These analyzers would be developed once, tweaked, and then would be applied in a repeatable fashion and give us a roadmap to help us design our audit tests. So really, these analyzers would help we realize benefits by analyzing entire populations at a time instead of the traditional sampling methods that we inform today. So as mentioned last week at the joint hearings, one of the biggest returns from this investment is the ability for us to extend the reach of our staff without expanding the current headcount. I'm going to stop here, I think, in the interest of time, and ask for your favorable consideration of our request for this strategic investment. That was item one. Item two is the salary request. And again, as mentioned earlier, we included funds to early implement, if you will, our proposed FY25 pay increases starting in the beginning of April of this year. As you know, we turned in an independent budget from the governor, so at the time we submitted our budget, we were unaware of the governor's plans to include a proposed salary treatment for all state employees, and also were unaware of the $1,000 retention supplements in December. So I also want to thank the governor and you, the legislature, for recognizing the great service of all the state employees. In light of those circumstances, I'm here to basically waive off our ask for the early salary implementation request and ask for your consideration that those funds be reallocated to cover the cost of the retention supplements, because those costs are not in our amended budget as submitted. And again, we estimate that the cost of those retention payments will be slightly less than the ask that we have in our amended budget. And if you'd like, we'd be glad to and willing to give David those details, but it should be less than what's in the budget. Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there and be glad to take any questions you or the committee have.
I do not see any questions, but yeah, if you'll get that information to David, that would be great.
Okay.
And we'll chat about that.
All right.
Moving forward.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Department of Revenue.
Is it okay if I close this?
I'll get back started again, yeah, it's fine.
Thanks.
Next time, just start mashing your button like Chairman Parsons did, and we can know you're in distress. Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today on the governor's recommendations for the Department of Revenue for the amended fiscal year 2024 budget. My name is Frank O'Connell, and I serve as the State Revenue Commissioner. I'm joined today by Chief Financial Officer Keisha Beavers, and you're all familiar with Austin Gibbons and Joe Snowden, our legislative and communications team. Before we begin, I'll give you a very brief overview of fiscal 23 collections. We had last fiscal year a 7.2% decrease in individual income tax, but a 51.7% increase in corporate income tax, an 8.4% increase in net sales tax, and a 3.5% increase in motor vehicle revenues. As you know, fiscal 23 was basically flat when compared to fiscal 22. Now, moving on to the budget, our appropriation is comprised of four key areas: administration, pass-through funds, external operations, and tax operations. Administration includes tax policy, human resources, finance and communications. Pass-through covers the forest land protection grants, the ERS retirement pass-throughs for the local county tax commissioners. And external operations is our Office of Special Investigations, our industry regulation group for alcohol and tobacco licensing, our local government services, which is basically property tax, and our motor vehicle registration division. Finally, our tax operations group comprises taxpayer services, tax compliance, and tax audits. Now, moving to your tracking sheet, on page 17 in section 42, the first item under departmental administration is the $69,968 that was the administration division's portion of the 1% salary supplement. On all of the divisions added up to a total of $990,380 across all the divisions. And let me join the other agency heads in saying it was greatly, greatly appreciated by our employees, especially heading into Christmas. Second, you'll see a figure of $300,000 on line 42.1.2. This request would assist the department in moving our data from our services to the cloud. We're currently at 1800 Century Boulevard. We have 278,000 square feet of space. Come January 1st next year, it'll be 110,000 square feet. So we're greatly diminishing our footprint, but that's because that is all the space we need in this environment. We'd like to move as few servers as possible to the new location. We probably will have to move a couple, but this request would help us move some data to the cloud, not have to move some servers, probably not have to refresh some servers. Now in section 42.5 and item 42.5.1, you'll see an increase of $716,018 for tax commissioners' retirement adjustments. That is a flow-through for us, not a figure that we come up with. Next issue is our biggest ask. On line 42.6.2, you'll see a request for approximately $2.4 million. This amount reflects a price increase in our contract with Georgia Correctional Industries to manufacture state license plates and provide decals for the annual renewals. Now, the final cost of the contract is always based on demand, but we, that's a significant amount when you look at the approximately $10.5 million that we're budgeted for. But I can tell you that in the years leading up to last year, GCI had asked for a cost increase. We met with them on several occasions and really couldn't agree on what an increase should be. We subsequently did a request for proposal. Great way to find out what the market thinks the cost should be. And as it turned out, GCI was approximately $5 million less than the second bidder. And the second bidder had experience with us prior to GCI. They had actually provided us with the license plates. Then we went back to GCI. So I think that helps get me more comfortable with the amount that GCI is charging us. But it is leaving us with a deficit of approximately $2.4 million. On page 18, line 42.8.2, you'll see $15,300 for an initial contact team. Now, the individuals for that contact team would be hired in the next fiscal year. So we're not looking for those funds for amended 24. This would just enable us to get their equipment so that assuming that we get the requested funds for fiscal 25, we could have their equipment and hit the ground running July 1st. Now these, we will request the funding for 6 new tax examiners, and this would be an initial contact team. These would be folks that would reach out to taxpayers who registered with us. In doing so, they got a sales tax number and withholding number, and never filed a return. So at most we wait 3 to 4 months after there's a return expectation for a new registrant. This group reaches out to find out why there hasn't been a return. Now we've been doing this since 2018 with temps, so we have found it to be worthwhile. Sometimes, you're opening a business, things are crazy, and you don't get everything done, including some very important things. You do have to register and pay online on the Georgia Tax Center. I'm sure that people get confused, and we're happy to guide them through the process of doing their returns, their first returns on the system. And the goal is, of course, to have a taxpayer who's compliant moving forward. Now, the last request, second to last request, is line 42.8.3, and that is for $108,525, and that is for 3 replacement fleet vehicles for our regional offices. We work out of 11 regional offices. I got to visit them last year. They probably range in size from anywhere from 15 to 30 people, all over the state, like I said. And they use the vehicles to go to taxpayers' locations. The managers of those units use vehicles to make in-person visits as they're managing the units. And we'd like to request replacement for 3 of those vehicles. They would be Ford Edges, I think at approximate cost of $36,000 apiece. Finally, on line 42.10.2, our request is for $18,225 to increase the hourly pay of seasonal mailroom staff from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. I'm sure, as you've all seen from signs on fast food places, it's hard to compete at $12 an hour, and at times we have not had temp positions filled that we need to get through the tax season, both around April 15th and then again in the fall at the extended due date. In fact, some of the temp agencies have told us at $12 an hour, they wouldn't even try to provide us any candidates. So we're hopeful that this will assist us in recruiting for these positions. Mr. Chairman, thank you for taking time to hear from us today on the amended fiscal 24 budget. We support the governor's recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll start with Floor Leader Gamble.
Commissioner, I just had a question, and I may have misunderstood, but on the 3 replacement vehicles.
Yes, sir.
You said those were Ford Edges and that those would cost approximately, how much did you say?
$36,000.
$36,000. Now, in the recommendation, it's $522,000. So, is that what's for the entire fleet beyond those 3 vehicles, or what does that include additional?
Well, the $522,000 is the 3 vehicles, and then it's the initial funds for the contact team, the 15.3. So it's those 3 numbers altogether.
Okay. So totaled up, it was a little bit unclear on how I was reading it. The second question I've got is, does your agency procure those vehicles, or does DOAS do that? Because didn't DOAS used to have a lot of the procurement responsibility for fleet vehicles? Is that how that still works? My understanding is that we procure the vehicles. If we have funding to do so, I recalled signing off in the past on vehicle requests. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask you a question related to that, and I want to ask you a question related to the vehicles. And we get all through the budget every year. There's requests for money for replacement vehicles or new vehicles. I'm just wondering. I've never thought about this before. This really is more of a general. But for example, your department procures the new vehicles yourselves. Then what do you do with the old vehicles? And why don't we ever see any money come? Those things have to. I know that they're eventually auctioned off by somebody, but I've never seen any money coming in. They gotta have some value, even $200, $300, $400. They gotta have some value. Why? So what happens with the vehicles that you're replacing? What happens with those vehicles?
We will surplus 3 vehicles, and I'm going to ask my CFO to tell me what the process is and where do the funds go once they're sold at auction or however they're surplused. Keisha?
Good afternoon. From my understanding, we contact OFM and notify them that we need to surplus vehicles.
Contact who now?
OFM, Office of Fleet Management,
Okay.
with DOAS, and notify them that we are surplusing the vehicles and transfer the information. I will have to follow up with you to get additional information to find out where the funding goes, but we typically do not receive any type of funds from those transactions.
Well, I can understand that. I just wonder, I just happened to think about that. There's got to be, they have some value. I mean, a $36,000 car coming in to replace one, I don't know how old they are, but I mean, you know, they're probably more like $2,000 or $2,500, but they'd be at least $500, $600, $700 worth when they're auctioned off. I just wonder why. I have never seen anything to show any funds coming in from selling those. Maybe there is. Maybe it's in DOS or something. I don't know, but just curious about it. You know, when you buy a new car, if you trade one in, which I haven't done for decades, but when you did, you can see it there on the contract. And so I'm just curious about that.
No, sir. I'm curious now that you bring the issue up. So I've never seen surplus funds coming back in our direction, but we'll find out what the answer
I mean,
is.
it's not a big thing.
Chairman Parsons.
Just interested in know what the process and how it happens.
So, someone much smarter than I am may have alerted me that DOAS comes in, they remit to the Treasury. They sometimes will retain a percentage for their operations. Some situations, depending on what it is, there may be some funds that end up staying with an agency, but most of them are returned to the Treasury minus a percentage for operations of DOAS.
Okay, that makes sense. I've just never actually seen anything on any of these tracking sheets that like $50,000 came in for cars have been sold. Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Yes, sir.
Mr. Commissioner, I believe you have answered all the questions for today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
You want one more? Just because you asked nicely. My guy. Chairman Prince.
Hey, get a quick, the carb thing that came up also in my head, so thank you, Chairman Parson. But on the tags, is there a way that we can, old tags, for lack of better words, are you guys bringing those back in and we, reissuing them out, or you just have to they just totally making new tags every day on those motor vehicle tags? Sorry.
I think we probably issue over $1 million tags a year. It's a good question. I'm not aware that we collect any of the old tags. I know I've got a couple in my garage as souvenirs.
I got a bunch of them. Find a place to take them. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Last but not least, DDS. Commissioner Moore, I appreciate you hanging in here with us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Pull that mic back across to you.
All right, see if we can get this thing working right.
There you go.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for allowing us to be here today. Certainly appreciate this committee, because typically any of the requests that we have, they first come through this committee, so we appreciate this committee very much. Certainly appreciate the governor and his support and the general body for the assistance that's been given to the department. I do have a slide presentation today, but to be honest, I'm I'm giving it to you for information more so than to actually talk from it, except for a few points. There are 3 separate line items that are unique to the agency that we're requesting today. The others are statewide as. First of all, let me be the first to say, on behalf of our employees, several of which we have here today, our Deputy Commissioner, Ricky Rich, our General Counsel, Angelique Clendon, Shavonda Leslie, who you all know. Claire McGurley is with us. She's an intern from Georgia Tech, public policy major. So we welcome her. Travis Kinney, our CFO, and Stacy Cheek, who is our budget director. On behalf of the employees who work for the agency, thank you for the $1,000. Most of our staff are frontline workers. They work in one of those 67 locations, and $1,000 goes a long way for them and for all of our staff. So we really, really appreciate that assistance. I will speak to a few slides that I have available for the committee because I think it's really important that we paint a picture of where we sit as it relates to driver services nationally as well as internationally. I'm proud to say that I am currently the chair of the ANVA International Association, which is a very large organization, represents this country, Canada, as well as some of our European partners. We are really happy as a state, first of all, to look at that very first number that I have up there, which is 98.876 of our customers, our credential holders in Georgia hold a real ID. That leads the entire country, and the number of people that we have seen at the department. They've given us a document that we can verify and show that those persons are the right people to hold those credentials. We're really proud of that. The state should be proud of that because many states, you will see notices go out. I've seen this in the airports around the country. Real ID, you need to sign up. Real ID, you need to sign up. There's a lot of push. That's because the majority of the country is not Real ID. As you can see, our state is overwhelmingly Real ID compliant, and we're very happy about that. I also like to paint a picture of where we are located in the state. With that map, you'll see that we have 67 current locations that are operating, but I'm proud to say you see a few stars on there as well. And when you see a star, that's an indication of the generous contributions that you've already invested into the organization for either building a new building and or expanding an operation. And many of those expansions, if not new centers themselves, are CDL centers, which we all know is very much needed around our state. We have roughly 400,000 CDL holders in the state at the moment. We are looking to absolutely and hopefully expand the amounts of testing that we can do in some of these new facilities that are represented by those stars. We will open. We will go from essentially where we operate in conjunction with a technical college down in Butts County, Jackson. We only operate 2 days a week because we share that pad. They train on it, we test on it. So they train on it a couple days, we test on it a couple days, but we'll be opening the end of February, a brand new site down in Forsyth, just south of Jackson, where that will be a 4.5-day operation. Again, expanding the ability to test drivers who may be needing to test for their CDL, expanding over in Douglasville, expanding up in Rome, expanding down in South Georgia and Hazelhurst. Those are just a few things, again, I wanted to point out to the committee because these are past requests that you've helped us to accomplish, and we are working to get those centers open. There are a lot of additional numbers there, one of which was the number of people that we served this past year, calendar year 2023. That number is very close to what we served in calendar year 2022. But what you'll note if you look at the black numbers that are at the bottom, and obviously I can't see that presentation all the way over there, but we went down in the right places that we needed to go down. as far as wait times and things like that. Number of people served, we went up in the right places where we needed to go up for centers and or number of persons that were served with our wait time less than 30 minutes. That's our goal. If you come into our location, by the time you get a ticket to the time that you get to a counter, we measure that time, and we want that time to always be 30 minutes. Now, there's some time before you get that ticket because you got to complete an application. If you didn't do that at home, that certainly may take you some time. Lots of people start counting when they hit the parking lot. You haven't walked in the building yet. We appreciate that. We can only measure the time for which we have the ability to measure, and that's when you get a ticket. And next up, again, I'll speak specifically to the requests. And obviously, we have 3 program areas in our agency: departmental administration, license issuance, as well as regulatory compliance. And you'll see in the tracking sheet those 3 items and a reflected budget for those requests for the $1,000 increase. Again, truly, truly appreciative of the governor and this body for granting that. It will go a long way. There are 3 other unique requests that I want to talk about specifically. Every 10 years or so, Georgia goes through a process of securing a vendor to provide our licenses. Our license that we print is a polycarbonate document. It's a hard plastic, it's a long word for hard plastic. That we print each year. It has a ton of secure features that you can see, security features that you can see, and it has a ton of security features that you cannot see. Law enforcement is able to see many of those, as well as some of those unique stakeholders like TSA, folks at the airport. But each time that we go for bid for this contract, we typically engage a third party who helps us write the specifications for the license that we hope to produce. First of all, this is a very highly competitive business, so there are multiple vendors who provide services for these RFPs. It's complex, and the contracts over the period of time for which many of these exist are exceed well beyond the $50+ million mark. So very high dollar contracts. We are requesting $150,000 in a consultant to help us to write and develop those requests so that they can, again, hopefully not end up in protest and or in some other area that does not benefit the state. Next request is somewhat unique to our agency because we mail a lot of things, right? Most customers receive a postcard before their services are due, letting them know that, hey, it's time to renew. Every time that you leave out of our centers with a temporary license that is printed on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But of course, we also send you your physical license over the next short few days. Likewise, any notices for suspensions, reinstatements, etc., those come in the mail. And a new mailing that we are doing most recently is the fact that last year we were able to implement our digital credentials, which are now available. Last May, we were able to go live with our Apple devices. Last October, we were able to go live with our Android devices. And what we do is mail the customer a notice just letting them know, hey, this credential was created. We want to ensure that we have that fraud mitigation in place so that if people did not do it, we can get our investigators working to try and investigate when we have problems. I'll note, or you'll note in the presentation, we give you a list of how drastically the cost of mail has increased over the last few years. We were originally mailing out at 55 cents, and we are up to, as of the 21st, just a few days ago, 68 cents. to mail out documents. Now, what you see in the red numbers that are represented on this 21.2 request for $341,057 for postage rate increase, you see those red numbers. They represent deficits that the agency has ran over the past couple of years, and where we are year to date over the first 6 months of this year, which is $332,405. These are real dollars that are not in our budget today, that we have traditionally tried to absorb either through not hiring folks or whatever it takes in order to get to those numbers. So we are requesting that assistance with increasing the amount of funds that are available to the agency so that we can continue to put out our mailing notifications to our customers. Next is a fairly large request that is line item 21.2.3, and it's card production server migration service upgrades, and that's a long term for moving our database from data centers that are currently at the North Atlanta these are not at the North Atlanta data center. Our main system is in Dallas, Texas. Our backup is in Pasadena, California. These are the databases that hold the 86 million records that Georgia has for customers over the time that we have been issuing licenses and been documenting each of those occurrences. Specifically within what we're trying to do is transition from those data centers into the cloud, the Gov Cloud, AWS Cloud, using some of the highest standards of security, which is FedRAMP. And again, our goal here is to make our data more secure, more easily accessible, and our ability to, over the long term, lessen the costs that it costs us to maintain this data. It doesn't get less, it only gets more. We're 86 million in counting, and each year, as you saw on the previous slide, we issue about 2.3 million customers face-to-face, another 800,000 online. So as we are securing this data, and this is all of our data, we want to make sure it is protected in the highest possible way imaginable. And our last, a part of that request also, as it relates to our issuing, the parts of issuing a credential that we do, about, I think it was the year 2016, we bought a number of equipment items in this same fashion in the amended budget, such as the computers, the CPU, the monitor, the printer, the fingerprint reader for those who sign on a machine. So anybody that does a transaction within our organization, that individual who is performing that action, they have to sign on with a fingerprint so that we know who did that transaction. Also, our point of sale devices, we have to replace all those items. The department is requesting $3.954 million in order to make those replacements of the 705 workstations that are currently located in our 67 centers. Again, soon to be a few more when we add those later this fall. And the final request, or excuse me, that is the final request. What this represents is just a summary of all of our requests, which is a net increase to the budget of $8,345,541, for the agency. Line item 21.1.2 for car production RFP development consultant, $150,000. 21.2.2 postage rate increase, $341,000, as well as 21.2.3 for car production server migration to the cloud, and that total again is $7,854,484. can't thank you enough, Mr. Chairman, again, for this committee for what you do. I'll go back to this particular slide. I like to brag on it. I'm being chair of ANVA. People, all they hear across the country is Georgia, 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 and the things that we're doing. I happen to be with Madam Chair Smith as we expanded a new center in Newton County just a few months ago, and we're looking to continue to do that in places where we have old and dilapidated locations. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report and my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to Chairman Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
And Commissioner, thank you for your work, and congratulations on your new position as chairman. It says a lot about not just you, but your staff and the state of Georgia. Good job you're doing. A quick question, reference the postage piece.
Sure.
Have we thought about maybe charging or putting that on the other end where the youth or the consumer actually pays that when they pay for whatever license they or that they have in mail to them, and we're talking less than $1 right now. So, based on what you showed me up here, that's just something to consider.
Internal to the department, we have not thought about it for regular mailings. What we have thought about is for expedited mailings. People make requests from the department to get something sooner than we can actually deliver. We print our licenses in Chanhassen, Minnesota. So that's where they come from, but it's a hub of Delta. So they fly here every morning, and then they are distributed out through Crown Road, our postage centers. But we haven't looked at
something to think about.
We haven't looked at for the customer paying that fee.
And the last question or observation, the cloud-based thing that you going to store your data.
Yes, sir.
Have we looked in, with the state agency, the technology guys or whomever that sort of
Yes.
do that for us to maybe we consolidating that with other state agencies, not so much the data itself, but the storage of it.
Unfortunately, this is a unique set of databases. Really, the rest of the state, it's a foundation for many of the operations of the other states because they rely on that data and that customer information. Our current vendor is Thales, and they are, this data is with that vendor who manages it on behalf of the state. So this is not a state database. This is a managed database for the state through a third party. Yes, sir.
Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman.
I want to point out that the move in Coweta County, Newnan, Coweta County, was your interaction with our local county commissioners, and you partnered very well with our local governments throughout the state, which I think is beneficial to our citizens and to y'all. If you just could expand on that briefly.
I absolutely can. And first of all, we absolutely do work with our county officials around the state. Most people, when they come into a building, they don't know if it's a state-owned or a local facility. They just know it's government. And we work very hard with the local, if we're in a city, that city council, if it's within a county, those county commissioners, as well as their staff, to ensure that many of them, they support our buildings. They pay for it. I mean, we pay them, a rental fee in some cases, but in many cases, it's still just a dollar lease. So it's critical that we have those local partnerships. Thank you for pointing that out.
Well, I will just echo that since I think you're probably familiar. You've partnered with my home county.
Yes, sir.
As well. So I know that's been a great partnership, and we're looking forward to new facility there along with GSP. So I don't see any other questions. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you hanging in to the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will call this meeting adjourned unless anyone else has anything for the committee. We're adjourned.